The grand ballroom of the Celeste Manor shimmered with golden chandeliers, laughter, and the clinking of crystal glasses. It was a night of extravagance, a wedding that boasted luxury in every detail. But in the center of it all, there was silence. A stunned, breathless silence. Every guest's eyes were locked on one woman, standing tall and unshaken. Maya. Celeste, the beautiful bride draped in a designer gown worth more than most people's yearly salaries, staggered back in disbelief. The groom, Nathan, clenched his fists. A murmur rippled through the elite guests. And then, in a single moment, Maya spoke, and what she said changed everything. "Let's talk about the truth." The room erupted. Hours earlier. A life divided by fate. Dorian Kane never expected to receive an invitation to his ex-fiancée's wedding. He sat in his sleek, modern penthouse, staring at the thick envelope embossed with golden lettering. Celeste was marrying someone else, Nathan Delacroix, the heir to one of the wealthiest investment firms in the country. Dorian scoffed, tossing the invitation onto his glass coffee table. How ironic. 2 years ago, Celeste had stood in this very apartment, telling him he wasn't ambitious enough for her future. She wanted more. More money. More power. More than Dorian could give. And now, she had it. Why even send this to me? Dorian muttered, swirling the whiskey in his glass. Was this her way of proving she had won? That she had traded him in for a man with a bigger bank account and better connections? He sighed, shaking his head. He had no reason to go. It would be a circus of arrogant socialites and people who looked down on anyone without a 7-figure portfolio. And yet. He hated to admit it, but there was a part of him that wanted to walk into that wedding and shake their world a little. Something different. Unpredictable. That was when he saw her. An encounter that changed everything. Dorian's car slowed at a red light in the middle of Bayside Avenue, one of the busiest areas in the city. Despite its grandeur, Bayside had two faces. One side gleamed with luxury boutiques and towering corporate offices, while the other was lined with dark alleys, small diners, and abandoned storefronts. He glanced out the window, barely noticing the homeless woman sitting against the side of a boarded-up bookstore. Except, she wasn't like the others. While most people in her position avoided eye contact, this woman sat with an almost unnatural composure, her eyes scanning the street as if studying the world rather than begging from it. She wasn't slumped in defeat. She was simply waiting. Dorian frowned, intrigued. Something about her felt off, not in a bad way, but in a way that made him wonder who she had been before life had brought her here. On an impulse, he pulled over. "Hey!" The woman looked up, startled but not frightened. Her eyes were sharp. Intelligent. "I don't have cash," she said flatly. Dorian smirked. "Didn't ask if you needed any." She gave him a wary look, brushing her messy hair out of her face. "Then what do you want?" That was the moment the idea struck him, an idea so absurd, so completely out of character, that he almost laughed at himself. But wasn't this exactly what he wanted? Something unexpected? "Have dinner with me," he said. The woman blinked. "Excuse me? I'll buy you dinner." "No catch." She hesitated. People don't just offer things like that for no reason. Dorian shrugged. "Maybe I do." After a long pause, she sighed. "All right. But if this is some weird rich guy experiment, I walk." Dorian grinned. "Deal." More than just a meal. They ended up in a quiet, old-fashioned diner where the smell of freshly grilled steak and coffee filled the air. The woman, Maya, ate with precision, not like someone starving, but like someone who had once dined in finer places. "So, Maya," Dorian leaned back. "How does someone like you end up, well, there?" Maya put down her fork. "How does anyone end up anywhere? Dorian raised an eyebrow. Cryptic answer. She smirked. Accurate answer. Dorian could tell she had secrets. And whatever they weren't just ordinary bad luck. There was something about her, a poise that didn't belong to the streets. And then, as if testing her, he said. I have a wedding to attend this weekend. My ex-fiancée's. You should come with me. Silence. Maya stared at him. You want me to be your +1 at your ex's wedding? Exactly. Why? Dorian smirked. Because it'll make one hell of a story. She folded her arms. What's in it for me? Dorian thought about it. A new dress. A fancy dinner. And a chance to remind the world you're more than what they see. Maya studied him for a long moment, as if trying to see past his words. Then, finally, she chuckled. Fine. But don't expect me to behave. Dorian laughed. I wouldn't dream of it. The beginning of something unforgettable. The next day, Maya found herself in an exclusive boutique, where tailors and designers fluttered around her like excited artists with a blank canvas. By the time they were done, she stood in front of the mirror, barely recognizing herself. Gone were the torn clothes, the weary look. In their place stood a woman who looked like she belonged at the finest events in the city. She wasn't just dressed for the wedding. She was ready to make history. As she turned, she caught Dorian watching her. There was no pity in his eyes. Just recognition. See, he said quietly. You were never lost. You were just waiting for the right moment to return. Maya took a deep breath. She wasn't just going to the wedding. She was walking into her own story. And no one, not Celeste, not Nathan, not the entire world, was ready for what would happen next. A stranger in a world of wealth. Maya stood in front of the grand, towering glass entrance of the Eleanor Boutique, one of the most exclusive fashion houses in the city. The kind of place where one dress cost more than most people's annual rent. She shouldn't be here. Every instinct in her body screamed that she didn't belong. Not anymore. Just yesterday, she was sitting on a cold pavement, invisible to the world. And now? Now, she was about to be fitted for a gown to wear to the wedding of a woman who represented everything she had lost. Dorian, ever the picture of effortless wealth, pushed open the boutique's golden-framed door and gestured for her to step inside. Come on, he said with a smirk. You're about to give the elite something to talk about. Maya hesitated for half a second before lifting her chin and stepping in. If they wanted a show, she'd give them one. A dress to rewrite history. Inside, the boutique was a world unto itself. Silk drapes, gold chandeliers, and the faint scent of fresh peonies and leather-bound journals filled the air. Rows of designer dresses shimmered under soft lighting, each more breathtaking than the last. The store's head stylist, a petite woman with sharp eyes and a clipboard that looked more expensive than Maya's entire life, gave them a once-over. Her gaze flickered over Dorian with immediate recognition and respect, but when she turned to Maya, she hesitated. It was the look Maya had grown used to, the silent, immediate judgment. The flicker of curiosity, then dismissal. I need something stunning for her, Dorian said, sliding his black Amex card onto the counter. No limits. The stylist's eyes widened slightly before her entire demeanor shifted. Suddenly, Maya wasn't just some woman who had wandered in, she was a high-priority client. Maya nearly laughed. Money. It could turn contempt into reverence in seconds. She let herself be ushered into the dressing area, where a small army of tailors began measuring, pinning, and draping her in fabric. Then came the dresses. Some were too extravagant, drowning her in lace and pearls. Others were too safe, dull enough to blend into the crowd. But then they found it. A gown of deep sapphire blue, its fabric shifting like liquid under the lights. It was bold, elegant, and, most importantly, powerful. Maya stepped onto the platform in front of the massive mirror. And for the first time in years, she saw herself not as a woman who had lost everything, but as a woman who had survived. Dorian, who had been watching from across the room, let out a low whistle. "Now that," he said, his voice softer than before, "is how you walk into a wedding like you own the place." Maya met his gaze in the mirror and smirked. "I don't plan to just walk in." She turned, fire in her eyes. "I plan to make history. A ghost from the past." The boutique staff fluttered around Maya, adjusting tiny details, but she barely noticed them. Because for a split second, just outside the boutique's glass door, she saw a familiar face. A woman. Staring at her. Maya's stomach dropped. No. It couldn't be. The woman's face was partially obscured by a hat, but the moment their eyes met, something flashed across her features: shock, recognition, fear. Then, just as quickly as she had appeared, she was gone. Maya blinked. Was she imagining things? Something wrong? Dorian asked, following her gaze. Maya hesitated. Tell him? Or let it go? No, she finally said, turning back. Just a weird feeling. But deep down, she knew better. That wasn't just a stranger on the street. That was someone from her past. And whoever she was, she knew who Maya was, too. The past refuses to stay buried. As they left the boutique, Maya couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching her. The woman's face had triggered a deep, buried instinct, the kind that told her trouble was near. Dorian didn't notice her tension. He was too busy checking details on his phone, confirming their schedule for the wedding tomorrow. She should have told him. But something inside her warned that this was her fight. And if her past was coming back to haunt her, she needed to be ready. The night before the wedding. Back at Dorian's penthouse, Maya paced the floor, her mind a whirlwind. Tomorrow, she would walk into a world that had cast her out. She thought of Celeste, her picture-perfect life, and the man she was about to marry, a man Maya had never met but already despised. Something about Nathan Delacroix's name sent a shiver down her spine. But why? She sat on the couch and pulled out her only possession from her old life, a small, weathered journal she had kept before everything fell apart. Flipping through the pages, she stopped when she saw it. A name. Nathan Delacroix. Her blood ran cold. Why was his name here? She read the notes she had scribbled back then, pieces of a puzzle she had tried to solve before the world had turned against her. And then, it hit her. Nathan Delacroix wasn't just some businessman marrying her ex's fiancée. He was connected to the reason Maya lost everything. The final choice. Maya sat frozen, staring at the page. The weight of the past and the present collided. This wasn't just a wedding. This was fate pushing her back into a fight she had once lost. Dorian walked into the room, glancing at her. You ready for tomorrow? Maya closed the journal and looked up. A slow, deliberate smile crossed her lips. Oh, she said softly. More than ready. Dorian chuckled. That's what I like to hear. Maya leaned back, exhaling slowly. Tomorrow wasn't just about walking into a wedding looking stunning. Tomorrow, she would walk in with the truth. And no one, not Celeste, not Nathan, not even the world, was ready for what was coming. The grand entrance that stunned the crowd. The sprawling Rosewood estate glowed under the golden evening light, its towering columns casting long shadows over the immaculately kept gardens. It was the perfect venue for the wedding of the year, a place where only the richest and most powerful could gather. The air buzzed with excitement as guests arrived in sleek black cars, stepping out in designer gowns and tailored suits. Inside the grand ballroom, conversations hummed beneath the shimmering crystal chandeliers. Gold-trimmed invitations had promised an unforgettable night. And yet, no one, not even Celeste herself, was prepared for what was about to happen. Because just as the waiters uncorked the first bottles of vintage champagne, the massive doors to the ballroom swung open. And in walked Maya. A collective hush fell over the crowd. Dorian stepped in first, dressed in a tailored charcoal suit, his presence commanding attention. But it was the woman beside him who stole the show. Maya walked with effortless grace, draped in the sapphire gown that caught the light like flowing water. Her sharp eyes swept across the room, missing nothing. She wasn't nervous. She wasn't weak. She was here to do exactly what she came for, and not a single soul in this room knew it yet. Celeste, perched at the center of the ballroom like a queen on her throne, turned her head at the disturbance. The moment her gaze landed on Maya, her smile froze. Because this was not the woman she had expected to see on Dorian's arm. This was a problem. The first cut, Celeste's silent attack. Celeste rose elegantly from her seat, a perfect vision of wealth and beauty. She had spent months curating this moment, ensuring that every detail was flawless, from her couture gown to the carefully chosen guest list. She had expected Dorian to show up, of course. She had even planned for it, a polite, condescending nod at best, a cold smile at worst. But this? Dorian had arrived with a woman no one recognized. A woman who, for some reason, made Celeste feel uneasy. Keeping her composure, she glided forward, the guests parting for her like waves. "Dorian," she said, her voice silk-wrapped steel. "What a surprise." Dorian smirked, his gaze flickering over her expensive wedding gown. "You invited me." "Yes, but I assumed you'd have the sense not to accept." Celeste's smile didn't falter, but her eyes flickered toward Maya. "And, you brought company." Maya, unfazed, held out her hand. "Maya." Celeste took the hand with deliberate slowness, her fingers barely grazing Maya's before withdrawing. "How lovely," Celeste purred. Dorian always did have unpredictable taste. Maya's lips curled into a smile. The first shot had been fired. And she was more than ready for war. The mocking whispers and the unexpected praise. As the couple moved further into the ballroom, whispers began to rise like static electricity. "Who is she? I've never seen her before. She looks stunning, but where does she come from?" Celeste's circle of friends, polished, plastic-perfect women with designer clutches, leaned in close, their smiles just a little too sharp. One of them, a woman in an emerald gown, tilted her head at Maya. "Your dress is divine," she said sweetly. "What designer?" Maya took a sip of champagne before answering, letting them wait. "Vintage," she finally said. "One of a kind." Which was true, because no designer would admit to dressing a woman they once saw on the street. The group tittered with forced laughter, but one of the older men in the group, a silver-haired tycoon, nodded in approval. "Dorian," he said, raising his glass, "you always did know how to keep things interesting." Maya caught Celeste's expression, the slight twitch at the corner of her mouth. Interesting. So Celeste didn't like when someone else had the spotlight. Good. Because Maya was just getting started. Nathan's uneasy stare. Across the ballroom, Nathan Delacroix stood by the bar, his jaw tight. He had spent the entire night shaking hands, playing the part of the perfect groom, but something about Dorian's date bothered him. She wasn't just some random socialite. She was familiar. And yet, he couldn't place her. But he would. Because deep down, Nathan had the sinking feeling that this woman was going to be a problem. The bride's final play. Celeste, sensing her control over the night slipping, decided it was time to reclaim it. With a graceful wave of her hand, she signaled to the staff. Within moments, the lights dimmed slightly, and a microphone was placed into her waiting hand. She turned to the crowd, smiling. "Thank you, everyone, for being here tonight," she began, her voice dripping with charm. "It means the world to Nathan and me to celebrate with those we love." A soft ripple of applause. "But before we continue," she said smoothly, "I would love to take a moment to acknowledge a guest who has surprised us all." She turned her gaze directly toward Maya. Dorian's hand subtly tightened around his glass. Maya simply tilted her head, waiting. "I must say, it's rare to see a fresh face in our circle," Celeste continued, her smile just a fraction too sweet. "Dorian has always had a talent for discovering hidden treasures." Maya exhaled slowly through her nose. So that's how she wanted to play this. Celeste was too polished to outright insult her, but her words were calculated, designed to plant a seed in the guests' minds. A whisper of doubt. A suggestion of mystery and scandal. And Maya knew exactly what to do. She stepped forward, her sapphire gown shimmering beneath the chandeliers, and took the microphone from Celeste's hand with a confidence that stole the breath from the room. "Thank you, Celeste," Maya said smoothly. "It's always refreshing to be reminded that wealth and class don't always go hand in hand." A stunned silence. A flicker of amusement crossed Dorian's face. Nathan's eyes narrowed. And Celeste? For the first time that night, Celeste looked nervous. Because this wasn't a woman she could push aside. This was a woman who knew exactly what she was doing. The moment that stopped the wedding. The ballroom held its breath. Maya stood at the center, microphone in hand, her sapphire gown shimmering like the deep ocean before a storm. Across from her, Celeste's smile had faltered, but she quickly recovered, letting out a light, artificial laugh, the kind meant to mask discomfort. Nathan, standing slightly behind Celeste, had gone still. His eyes were locked on Maya, brows furrowed as if trying to place her. Trying to remember. Because somewhere deep in his memory, he knew her. The guests, sensing tension, watched with anticipation. Some sipped their champagne a little slower, others exchanged whispers behind gloved hands. Dorian, standing beside Maya, remained silent, but there was a hint of amusement in his eyes. He knew that whatever was coming next, it was going to be good. Maya let the silence stretch for another beat before she finally spoke. "I'd like to take a moment to thank Celeste," she said smoothly, her voice controlled but sharp. "For reminding us all that sometimes, the past has a funny way of catching up to the present." Celeste's eyes flickered with momentary panic, but before she could respond, a voice rang out from the back of the room. A voice that made Maya's blood run cold. "Maya?" The room shifted as heads turned, guests parting like waves to reveal a woman standing near the entrance of the ballroom. Maya's breath hitched. There she was. Camille. Her sister. The sister she hadn't seen in years. A ghost from the past. Maya felt the weight of the moment crush against her chest. She had imagined this reunion 1,000 times, but never here, never in front of the very people who had once destroyed her life. Camille took a hesitant step forward, her face a mixture of relief and disbelief. "Maya. It's really you." Maya swallowed hard, forcing herself to stay composed. This wasn't part of the plan. Dorian glanced between them, his sharp mind already piecing things together. "This just got interesting," he murmured under his breath. The crowd, intrigued by the unexpected development, leaned in closer. Celeste, who had been riding high on control just minutes ago, was no longer smiling. Nathan, however, had gone pale. Because he wasn't just staring at Camille. He was remembering. Remembering a scandal from years ago. Remembering why Maya's name sounded so familiar. And Maya? Maya was watching his face carefully. Because now, she had confirmation. Nathan Delacroix had been part of the reason she lost everything. The truth unraveled. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. Maya took a breath, grounding herself. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about justice. About setting the record straight. I take it you know each other? Dorian asked casually, though his eyes were anything but casual. He was assessing the situation like a man who knew a bomb was about to go off. Maya turned to Camille, her voice quieter but firm. How did you find me? Camille hesitated. I've been looking for you for years, Maya. Her voice broke slightly. They told me you ran away. That you didn't want to be found. Maya's hands clenched into fists at her sides. They, she echoed. And then, Camille turned her gaze toward Nathan. Nathan flinched. A small, almost invisible movement, but Maya caught it. Dorian saw it too. His lips curled into a slow smirk, sensing blood in the water. Oh, Dorian murmured, low enough for only Maya to hear. This just got deliciously messy. The connection no one expected. Nathan cleared his throat, attempting to regain his composure. I don't know what this is about, he said smoothly, though his voice wasn't as steady as usual. But perhaps this conversation would be better suited for a more private setting. Maya tilted her head, studying him. He was afraid. And that meant he had something to hide. No, I think the setting is perfect, she said. After all, this is a celebration, isn't it? She turned to Celeste, who looked caught between fury and confusion. Did Nathan ever tell you, Celeste? Maya asked, voice light but deadly sharp. Did he ever tell you what he did to me? Celeste's perfectly polished mask slipped for just a moment. What are you talking about? She demanded. Nathan's jaw tightened. I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but... Oh, it's no game, Maya interrupted. You see, a few years ago, I was a lawyer. A promising one. Until I got framed for something I didn't do. A ripple of unease moved through the crowd. Some guests were already whispering, recognizing pieces of the story. Maya's voice remained calm. I was set up. Someone fabricated evidence against me, and just like that, my career, my reputation, my life, was gone. She took a step forward, eyes locking onto Nathan's. And I didn't know who was responsible. Nathan took a step back. Until now. Nathan's fall from grace. The room erupted. Guests gasped. Some murmured amongst themselves. The weight of Maya's words hung in the air like a storm. Nathan turned to Celeste, his face tight with desperation. You don't actually believe this, do you? He asked. She's making things up. I don't even. But Camille stepped forward. I found the records, she said. The files Maya wasn't allowed to see. The name of the anonymous source who submitted the false claims against her. She took a breath and turned to Celeste. It was Nathan. A sharp inhale from Celeste. A stunned murmur from the guests. Nathan snapped. This is ridiculous, he barked, his polished mask cracking at the edges. Celeste took a small step away from him, her hands clenching at her sides. For the first time, she was uncertain. Because deep down, she knew Nathan had secrets. She had just never expected them to come crashing down at her own wedding. Maya's victory. Maya took in the scene before her. Nathan, desperate, unraveling. Celeste, silent, calculating. The guests, divided, whispering amongst themselves. She had come here expecting to make a statement. She hadn't expected to blow up the entire wedding. Dorian, watching from the sidelines, let out a low, appreciative laugh. Well, he murmured, this was absolutely worth the price of admission. Maya's heart raced, but for the first time in years, it wasn't out of fear. It was out of vindication. Because the truth was out. And Nathan Delacroix's perfect empire was about to fall. A silence that shattered everything. For a long, unbearable moment, no one spoke. The music had stopped. The clinking of glasses had ceased. Even the whispering among guests had dwindled into a stunned, suffocating silence. Maya stood at the center of it all, her sapphire gown gleaming under the chandeliers, her shoulders squared, her eyes unwavering. And across from her, Nathan Delacroix, the groom, the elite businessman, the man who ruined her life, stood frozen, his face drained of color. Celeste, the beautiful, carefully poised bride, stood stiffly beside him. Her expression was unreadable, her fingers twitching at the edge of her silk gown. Everyone in the ballroom was waiting. Waiting for someone to speak. Waiting for someone to react. Waiting to see who would make the first move. It was Nathan who cracked first. "This is ridiculous," he snapped, his voice too sharp, too defensive. He turned to Celeste. "You don't actually believe this, do you?" Celeste didn't answer. And that silence? It spoke louder than anything she could have said. The groom's desperate lies. Nathan turned back to the crowd, realizing that he was losing control of the narrative. "Listen to me," he barked, his voice growing more desperate. "I don't know what game she's playing, but this is insanity. Why would I ever have anything to do with her?" Maya's lips curled into a slow, knowing smile. "You don't remember me?" she asked, tilting her head. Nathan hesitated. A fraction of a second. But it was enough. Maya stepped forward, closing the space between them. "You framed me," she said. "Years ago. You were the reason I lost everything." Nathan laughed, a short, forced sound. "That's absurd. I had no reason to." "Oh, but you did," Maya cut in smoothly. "And I can prove it. The proof that ended the wedding." Camille stepped forward, holding up a leather-bound folder. Inside? The documents Maya had never been able to access. "You were the one who submitted the falsified financial records," Camille said, her voice steady. "And when the investigation started, you made sure Maya took the fall." Nathan's jaw clenched. Dorian, who had been watching the chaos unfold with quiet amusement, let out a low whistle. "Well," he murmured, swirling the champagne in his glass, "this is better than any wedding toast." The guests had started whispering again. And this time, it wasn't in Nathan's favor. Maya turned her gaze back to Celeste. "How does it feel?" she asked softly. "Knowing the man you're about to marry is a fraud?" Celeste's fingers tightened into fists. For a moment, she didn't move. Then, with slow, deliberate movements, she reached up and unclasped her diamond necklace. The necklace Nathan had given her. And she let it drop to the floor. The sound was deafening in the silence. Then she turned, not to Maya, not to the guests, but to Nathan. And when she spoke, her voice was ice. The bride's ultimate betrayal. "How long?" she asked. Nathan frowned. "What? How long were you planning to lie to me?" Celeste's voice was dangerously low, each word like a sharp blade. Nathan stiffened. I don't." Celeste exhaled, slow and controlled. Then she smiled, but it wasn't the kind of smile she had worn when she first greeted guests tonight. This was something colder. Something merciless. "You know," she said, glancing down at her engagement ring, "I always wondered if you were hiding something from me." She slid the ring off her finger. Nathan took a step forward, panic flashing across his face. "Celeste. Don't," she cut him off. "Don't try to fix this. Not here. Not in front of them." Her eyes flickered to the guests, the wealthy investors, business moguls, and socialites who had once admired Nathan. Now, they were watching him like vultures circling a dying animal. And Celeste knew exactly what she was doing. She turned back to Maya, her expression unreadable. "You got what you came for," she said softly. "Now leave." Maya lifted her chin. I think I'll stay a little longer, she said. Because this? This was only the beginning. Nathan's last stand. Nathan's carefully curated image of power and control was unraveling before everyone's eyes. And he knew it. But he wasn't done fighting. He turned on Maya, his mask of charm and confidence crumbling into something uglier. You think you've won? He sneered. You think exposing me will fix what happened to you? Maya's expression didn't change. I don't need to fix what happened to me, she said. I just needed the world to see who you really are. Nathan let out a bitter, humorless laugh. You're nothing, he spat. You're just some washed-up lawyer who... Dorian, who had been casually sipping his champagne, cut in smoothly. Well, actually, he drawled, that's not entirely true. Nathan froze. Dorian set his glass down and placed a hand on Maya's shoulder, an easy smirk playing on his lips. See, Maya isn't just some washed-up lawyer, he continued. She's about to be the lead counsel for one of the most powerful firms in the city. Nathan's face drained of color. Maya simply smiled. Because it was true. After everything that had happened, after losing her career, her home, her reputation, Maya was finally reclaiming what was hers. And thanks to Dorian's influence, she wasn't just coming back. She was coming back stronger. The groom's fall from grace. Nathan looked around, desperate. But he had no allies left. The guests who had once praised him. Now, they whispered about him. Celeste? She had already walked away. Dorian? Amused, but uninterested. And Maya? She had already won. Finally, Nathan let out a slow breath. And then, without another word, he turned and left the ballroom. The guests parted like water, watching as he disappeared through the exit, his fall from grace now complete. Celeste, standing near the door, didn't even glance at him as he passed. A new beginning. Maya took a deep breath, letting the moment sink in. She had come here expecting closure. What she got was so much more. Dorian leaned in slightly. So, he murmured, how does it feel? Maya turned to him. And then, for the first time in a long time, she smiled. It feels like a new beginning, she said softly. Dorian grinned. Then let's get out of here, he said, offering his arm. Maya took it. And as they walked toward the exit, the whispers of the guests followed them. Not in judgment. Not in mockery. But in awe. Because tonight, Maya wasn't just a guest at this wedding. She was the reason it fell apart. And that? That was a story the world wouldn't forget. Walking away from the ashes. Maya stepped out of the Rosewood Estate ballroom and onto the grand terrace, inhaling the crisp evening air. Behind her, the remnants of the wedding lay in utter ruin, Nathan exposed, Celeste humiliated, the entire event reduced to a scandal that would be whispered about for years. She had done it. She had torn down the man who destroyed her life. She had walked into a world that once cast her aside and made it bend to her presence. And yet, as she stood there, staring at the city skyline, a question settled in her chest like a weight. What now? She had spent years surviving, clinging to the idea of revenge, of justice. But now that she had it, what was left? Not quite the ending you expected, huh? Maya turned to find Dorian leaning casually against the railing, a knowing smirk playing on his lips. She let out a slow breath. I thought it would feel different. Dorian raised an eyebrow. Like confetti falling from the sky? A parade in your honor? Maya chuckled, shaking her head. Something like that. Dorian studied her for a long moment, his usual amusement tempered with something softer, quieter. I told you before, he said. You weren't lost. You were just waiting for the right moment to return. Maya looked down at the city, lights flickering in the distance. For so long, she had believed she had nothing left to return to. But maybe she was wrong. Maybe this wasn't the end of her story. Maybe this was just the beginning. Celeste's final words. Just as she was about to speak, the door behind them creaked open. Celeste stepped onto the terrace, still in her wedding gown, though the weight of the night had taken its toll. Her perfect makeup was slightly smudged, her posture no longer as rigid. But her eyes? They were calculating. "I should thank you," Celeste said, her voice eerily calm. "You saved me from marrying a liar." Maya turned, arching an eyebrow. "Is that what you think I came here for?" Celeste's lips twitched. "No. I know you came for him." Maya waited. Celeste sighed, looking out over the city. "You know, I used to think the worst thing in life was losing. Turns out, the worst thing is winning and realizing you backed the wrong horse." Maya remained silent, studying her. "You wanted justice," Celeste continued. "Well, you got it. But here's a little advice: you can destroy a man's reputation in one night, but if you don't finish the job, he'll come back." Maya frowned. "What are you talking about?" Celeste turned to face her. "Nathan," she said simply. "He's not done. He doesn't care about redemption, or righting his wrongs. He cares about power. And when men like him lose it, they don't let it go quietly." Maya stiffened. Dorian, who had been silent, let out a low whistle. "So, let me get this straight. Your ex-fiancé just got publicly humiliated, lost his reputation, and is now a walking disgrace, and you think he's going to fight back?" Celeste smiled thinly. "No, Dorian. I don't think. I know." Maya exchanged a glance with Dorian. Nathan was ruined, yes. But Celeste was right, he wasn't the kind of man to let go without a fight. And that meant one thing. This wasn't over. Not yet. A dangerous proposition. Celeste took a step closer, lowering her voice. "Nathan's businesses? They won't collapse overnight. He still has connections. If I were you, I'd make sure he doesn't get back on his feet." Maya crossed her arms. "And what exactly are you suggesting?" Celeste hesitated. Then, in a voice so quiet Maya almost didn't catch it, she said, "I want in." Maya blinked. "Excuse me?" Celeste exhaled. "You're smart, Maya. But you're too noble to play the long game. Nathan won't come for you head-on, he'll go for your future, the new career you're about to rebuild. He'll make sure no one hires you, that you become nothing more than a footnote in a scandal." Maya's stomach tightened. Because deep down, she knew Celeste was right. Nathan wasn't done. And she needed to be one step ahead. "I have access to everything," Celeste continued. "The accounts, the hidden investments, the offshore dealings. If you really want to take him down, we do it properly." Maya narrowed her eyes. "And why would you help me?" Celeste's smile was slow, almost wicked. "Because I refuse to be the woman who was fooled." Maya studied her for a long moment. And then, to her own surprise, she smiled. "All right," she said softly. "Let's finish the job. One last loose end." As Maya and Celeste stood there, forming an unlikely alliance, Dorian chuckled. "Well," he mused, "this just got interesting." Maya turned to him. "Still think I should have walked away?" Dorian smirked. "Not a chance." He glanced toward the ballroom, where guests were still recovering from the disaster inside. "You know," he said thoughtfully, "I hear Paris is beautiful this time of year." Maya frowned. "Paris?" Dorian shrugged. "I have an old friend there. One who knows a thing or two about dealing with men like Nathan." Maya tilted her head, considering. A week ago, she had been living on the streets, forgotten. Now? She was about to go international. She let out a slow breath, nodding. All right, she said. Let's do this. Dorian grinned. Good choice. Celeste lifted her champagne glass from the table beside her. To ruining Nathan Delacroix. Maya clinked her glass against hers. No, she corrected. To rebuilding everything he tried to take. And just like that, the real game began. The ultimate twist, a message from the enemy. As they exited the terrace, Maya's phone buzzed in her hand. She glanced down. No caller ID. A text message. She opened it. You think this is over? You have no idea who you're dealing with. ND. Maya stared at the screen, her pulse steady. Dorian peered over her shoulder, reading the message. Then, with a smirk, he said, "Oh, this is going to be fun." Maya exhaled. Nathan had just made a mistake. He had warned her. And that meant she had time to prepare. She smiled. Let's give him something to be afraid of. With that, she put her phone away, and walked into the future she was about to reclaim.